In 2018, the Ninja Turtles were rebooted, and with that came along a brand new show called Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. There were a lot of changes to the show that left fans undecisive if the show was going to be good or not. At first there were a few things that I didn't like about the show, but now I've come to love. When I heard the show was going to be in a 10-minute format, I was expecting the show to be a lot more like Teen Titans Go, but to my surprise it wasn't, and was still able to feel a lot like a Ninja Turtles show with a 10-minute episodes. So today I thought it would be a good idea to rank my top 10 episodes from season 1. And before we do that, leave your list in the comment section below, as I'm pretty sure your list will be different to mine, and I'm rather interested to hear what your list is. Now, let's get on with the video.
Yeah, go big or go home.
Okay, so for some honourable mentions, the first up is Repo Mantis. In this episode, Don and Mikey want a movie car, but the only way they can get it is by taking away Todd's caravan. So they build Todd a new house, they return and get their car, and risk so many civilians' lives. This episode was a really nice one to see Don and Mikey's relationship in this version of tmnt, and not to mention that the whole adventure they had within this episode was really enjoyable. But not to mention that this is the first appearance of Todd, so how could this episode not be on the list?
This is a negotiation. We gotta play it smooth.
Next up is Ancient Art of Hide and Seek. In this episode, Master Splinter teaches the turtles some ninja moves, and then sets them on a task to retrieve a key for him. Through some luck, they are able to pull the heist off. I was enjoying watching the turtles train throughout any version of tmnt and learning ninjutsu, and this episode did that, but in a very unique way, and I do think that really helped this episode.
What's a disguise?
Tricked by the master.
But you're not a turtle! Oh wow.
Finally, for the honourable mentions, it would have to be newsworthy. In this episode, the turtles are hunting down Hippopotamus, but one keeps trying to stop them as he claims to be their one-true enemy. But in the final fight, the turtles have a big showdown between Hippopotamus and Warren Stone, and was able to take both villains down. This episode was a really good example of why the 10-minute formula works really well for Rise. It can do fun adventures with good action while skipping all the filler content, which is perfect for tmnt.
For I am Warren Stone, your greatest foe, and...
I'm sorry, Warren who?
For my number 10 spot, I would have to give it to Snow Day. I don't really like musicals all too much, but man, is that Snow Day song one of the best songs ever. I think it may be the only reason why this episode is on the list, is just because of how amazing that song is. But in this episode, we see the Turtles and April have a snowball fight, but Ghost Bear tries to ruin the fun, but then he gets actually turned into Ghost Bear, and the Turtles defeats him, and yeah, I must admit, the only reason why this episode is really on the list is just because of that song. Other than that, I don't think it would not make this top 10.
Snow day, hooray!
Next up is how to make enemies bend at your will. In this episode, Baron Draxum intends on moving up the villain ladder. So one night when the Foot is trying to retrieve a piece of the Shredder armor, Baron Draxum lets the Turtles know. And that is when things get out of hand. The Turtles, the Foot, some gardeners all have a massive fight that is just amazing. Baron Draxum gets a piece of the armor and becomes a leader of the Foot Clan. This episode is a really fun one for Baron Draxum, and it's really interesting to see how far he'll go to accomplish his own goals. But that fight was just amazing, and I would definitely like to see more of those gardener characters.
Waiting is for fools.
Next up is Bugbusters. In this episode, the Turtles team up with Big Mama to collect the Uskitos. But when the Turtles hand them over, she betrays them and locks them up. But Leo is free and is able to get his brothers out. But that is when Baron Draxum shows up, and that is when the big battle ensues. This does lead to Raph being able to unlock his true mystic power with him saving Leo, and this episode I feel shows the potential this show had if it was going to be a 20-minute show. This episode best shows how to combine comedy and action with a perfect balance. And when you look at the episodes before this one, it does stand out quite a lot. It's a shame that more episodes were not like this one, but at least we got this one.
This calls for the delicate touch of a genius.
Next up is Mystic Mayhem. This episode had a lot going for it, as it would be the make or break it for most people. But in this episode, the Turtles and April come across a new pet. April was kidnapped to a mystic hidden city. So it's up to the Turtles to go and save her. While they are there, they get themselves new weapons and go straight into battle. But the lab explodes, so the Turtles quickly escape. This episode had to do so much, and I think for the most part it did a really good job of trying to do everything it had to do, and maybe a little bit more.
Hey, it plays fetch! And teleports, which is, oh my gosh, it teleports!
Next up is Endgame. I had so much high expectations going into this episode, and I would say for the most part I was and still am disappointed with this episode. So in this episode, the Turtles are trying to escape, and they do. Splinter and April get some help to rescue the Turtles, but are stopped by Baron Jackson. They have an interesting battle that is then taken to a new level when everyone is teleported to a baseball arena and then must fight Baron Jackson, who is in the Shredder armor. The fights in this episode are some of the best that the show has ever gotten, and with some of them being very impactful and very visually impressive. But from going to a developed Ninja Turtles in the last episode to then going into this episode where the Turtles more or less just lose all that character development, it sort of just makes it a little bit pointless to watch in the last episode. I'm all for people being the best selves and all, but I think it does make the previous episode and the character development within that episode really pointless, and that's a real shame because the previous episode was a really good one.
We shall miss you, Father.
I'm not rest in peace hurt, I'm rest on the couch hurt.
Next up is Shadow of Evil. In this episode, the Turtles are going around beating up a bird to retrieve a part of the Shredder armor. Meanwhile, Splinter and April join the Foot Clan locating another part of the armor. The Turtles and the Foot Clan meet, and they have a really amazing battle between Splinter and the Turtles. But it gets so much better, as Baron Jackson shows up and reveals that Splinter is Lujitsu. This episode was amazing for battles alone, and again, just another really fun episode that has a good balance of comedy and action. Plus, how can this scene not make it into the top 10?
I look good. Clothes of a teen, body of a Greek god.
Next up is Evil League of Mutants. In this episode, Baron Jackson gathers the Turtles' worst enemies to take the Turtles down, and he persuades them to join him by singing. I think you already know why this episode is so high up on the list. The Turtles want to do some training, but Splinter is not much help and takes away their weapons. But when the Turtles encounter the villains, they are forced to fight them with fish and ladders. As stupid as this fight sounds, it is somehow so amazing, and then it is revealed that they have some Lujitsu DNA in them. The song was amazing, the action was amazing, the comedy was amazing. This episode was so fun to watch, and my god, we really need a Rise of tmnt musical.
What's going on here? Who is this?
That would be Todd, sir. Trust me, he's as bad as they come.
For number 3, it had to be Okami Tsunami. In this episode, the Turtles decide to become heroes, and to do that, they decide to stop paper thieves. Well, I guess they must start somewhere. But it turns out that paper thieves are the Foot Clan. So after multiple attempts to stop them, they track them down to a boat. On the boat, the Turtles have a big battle with them and win. This episode for me is a clear example of what the other episodes should have been more like. More story focus with a lot of action and really good comedy. These 3 things make the best stories, and this episode was no exception. With this episode being the second episode on the show, it's a little disappointing that most of the other episodes are not as good as this episode.
Really think I would have let you make salami paper without putting a tracer in it? It's okay, I put 2.
For number 2, had to be One Man's Junk. In this episode, the Turtles are trying to retrieve a piece of the Shredder armor from Repo Mantis. Raph and Leo don't trust on Mikey's plan, and only make things worse when they release the cat mutant thing. I think that's the correct term to use, I'm not too sure. They're able to stop the cat, but Repo has already stolen a piece of the Shredder armor. Just like with Okami Tsunami, this is what I expected from Rise. Amazing comedy, action, and story, all combined into one to create a perfect episode. I wish so many episodes were more like this one, as this episode goes to show the best parts of the show, and definitely shows the strengths you can have with a 10-minute formula and make a really good and amazing episode.
Dollar bills, y'all!
So, for my number 1, had to be Insane in the Mama Train. In this episode, the Foot is moving the Shredder armor, so the Turtles learn how to fight properly and change nearly everything about themselves. And then the Turtles get on the train, and oh my god, is this the best thing I've ever seen from Ninja Turtles. Where do I even begin with how amazing this fight scene is? The amazing animation, the comedy, the fighting, the seriousness. I don't think I could put into words with how amazing this fight is. This does show how amazing and perfect a show could have been if it was more serious. This is just perfect. I really do wish Rise was a bit more like this. Shame it wasn't, but at least we got this one amazing episode.
You must remain Oh no! April! The armor! Training over, you on pass. Graduate, you are ninja-fied. Hip hip hooray, we go!
But yeah, that's my list for my top 10 favourite Rise of tmnt episodes. Let me know in the comment section below if you agree with this list, and if you don't, let me know in the comment section below what your top 10 episodes are. But yeah, that's gonna be it for today guys. If you do like something, please share, like, subscribe and all that stuff. Goodbye, yo. Bye.
My name is Randall. I am an average teenage boy.